For those of you that don't know me, I'm Julio Vasconcelos. I'm the managing partner of Atlantico. I'm going to welcome now my good friend, Rodrigo Schmidt, who I met back when I used to work at Facebook a little over 10 years ago. You know, Rodrigo was actually the first Brazilian at Facebook, now Meta, maybe second if you count Eduardo. And Rodrigo joined Facebook back in 2008. And over there, he actually helped to create and scale a lot of the products that many of you, I'm sure, have used, things like Hadoop and Hive, Messenger, for example. I remember working with you on business pages way back when, obviously kind of core search and a lot of the other infrastructure investments that Facebook was doing at the time. And over these last couple of years, he's really been leading at Meta new product ideas, right? So as a company thought of new ideas, a lot of them powered by AI technology, something that he's been working with AI and machine learning for now well over a decade. So he's a great person to speak about this. He spent also a lot of time at Instagram as one of the leaders there in the engineering organization, where he also had led a lot of the efforts to bring relevance and personalization to the app's feed. So when you think about why Instagram is so good, a lot of that is AI and machine learning, and I think a lot of the algorithms that Rodrigo and his team built. And Rodrigo is going to be interviewing in a fireside chat format Jerome Pesenti, who was recently the VP of Artificial Intelligence at Meta. So if awesome. Jerome's here, he's going to be joining us soon. And he was leading Meta's AI research and all the applied AI teams there. So a lot of the recent announcements and articles with sort of AI advancements that Meta has put together, a lot of that came from Jerome's product and research organization. And he's been a 25-year veteran, really, of AI. He's also the CEO of Benevolent Tech, which is a division of Benevolent AI, which actually applies AI to clinical stage drug discovery and development companies. So it's kind of a very interesting applied AI example, which is amazing. And before that, he was at IBM, where he was VP of IBM's Watson, leading to the creation and development of the whole Watson platform. So, Rodrigo, I'm going to hand it off to you. I'm going to go backstage. Jerome, welcome. Looking forward to this. You guys have the floor for the next 15, 20 minutes. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Julio. I guess we'll take it from here. Like, Jerome, so great to see you again. Jerome and I worked together a couple of years ago, like in his AI org, which was awesome. And Jerome, like, great to have you like here. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation and joining us. We don't have much time, so I guess I'm gonna jump into a few questions. I'm gonna try to get through as many as possible. The first one is pretty simple, just to get us started. And like, there's this new wave. We've been all like, this whole event was put together because of this new wave around like AI, particularly generative AI. But we had like past waves before on AI. Like back in the day when I was in college, AI was already a thing. And then there was the AI winter, and then there was like the AI like come back, and then there's like another like short winter. So what is different about this wave compared to the previous waves and like different like AI technologies that we had before versus what like this creative power that has been generative AI recently?
Yeah, I mean, on the surface of it, you'd say, oh, it's just, same happened before. Actually, I remember, being super impressed by generative AI in the past. I don't know if you remember image captioning. The first time it came out, it was pretty impressive. I did a post in my team like at Meta 3 years ago on our new bots called BlenderBot. It was really like also pretty impressive at the time. And then, we've had, Big Blue, we've had Jeopardy, we've had Go. So there's been like AI in the headlines. But I actually think this is quite different, because I'll tell you the big difference for me is that I always told people about AI. Now they tell me about it. So I meet people in the street and they tell me, have you checked ChatGPT? Like they tell me about AI. I've never seen that before. Now, it's just struck so much of the imagination of a wide population. It's very unique. I think it'll be a unique moment in the history of AI.
So then like the great thing, and I know that like from your end, like you've been thinking about the problems that people are like wondering now, like you've been thinking about them for many years, because you've been working on those like technologies from the inception. One so like one thing in particular that I remember, like you had a team working on like the ethical considerations of like the use of AI. What are the main like what are the most like the biggest challenges like in that direction, and if there is anything different compare like with respect to like generative AI versus like things like relevance and recommendations that I know like was some of like our biggest concern like with feed and like ranking and things like that.
Yeah, I would say there are too many concerns to list them, but I'll highlight two. I mean, one of them is something that Sam was just talking about in the previous session. I think generative AI really creates a very thorny copyright problem. I actually have been thinking about it, and I just can't come up with a solution. Like, I don't know how it's going to be solved. You know, we need to figure out a new framework, because it's obviously inspiring itself from everything it ingests, sometimes very literally, yet it's not the same, right? It generates completely new things. So how do we, let that happen while actually compensating the people from which it's actually training? I don't know. I think there needs to be some kind of no-nonsense framework there for that. That's one piece. I think the second piece that's even thornier and harder to address is, I would say, bias. So, if you look for like image generation, like I have like a bunch of presentation I've done this way, like use Stable Diffusion, you ask it, okay, draw me a CEO, or draw me like a secretary, or draw me like a doctor, or draw me a nurse. The bias is super obvious. And maybe you can tweak the system to avoid this, but it's deeply ingrained into the data, right? The bias in our society. So it tends to amplify this bias. And that, I think, can be a really big problem, right? Because every time if a student, they're going to generate a presentation about a CEO or a doctor, it's going to be a white male, that is really detrimental. So I would say these are two very thorny problems that we need to address,
And then shifting gears a little bit, and I know like a lot of like our audience like here today, like they come up from the technical side, and a lot of them are developers or like CTOs. And one thing that one question that we got like multiple times, like what is the impact of generative AI to like software development? Like we see things like Copilot that like can really help you speed up your development like velocity. Like what do you see as like the biggest impact that AI can have on software development in years to come?
Yeah, I mean, I have like very simple advice. If you are software developers, you need to use these tools today. Both Copilot and ChatGPT are super helpful. I'll give you an example, because after 10 years, I started a new company, a new AI company 3 months ago, and I'm coding again after 10 years. And it's amazing how it's kind of like my coding companion, and I can ask it any questions and it puts me on the right track. And learning to use this tool took me a while, actually. It took me a couple of months. But instead of bugging my more senior developers about how to do it, I found actually asking these tools is way, way more effective. So I think there's really this kind of like coding coach aspect, which is quite useful. I think the other side that I see that with my senior developer on my team, it just makes them another 2 to 3x more productive. It's kind of insane, like how fast, because you can just write a lot of cookie cutter code much, much faster. You can transform code, you can take a library out there, it's written in the wrong programming language, you can transfer it to another one. It makes people a lot more productive, especially the best developers. So if you're a developer, don't poo-poo these things. Like, they are really critical. And to be honest, right now, when I recruit, it's one of my first questions. How are you using these tools? How effective are you using them? And if you don't, most likely we won't, recruit you.
And is that like, I see, is that true for like every other function that could be impacted by it? Because I see, for example, like I'm not coding anymore, but like a lot of my days these days are spent like writing things. And like I find like ChatGPT in particular, like the best companion for like bouncing back like ideas and like rewriting things, or like preparing like for this Q&A. Like I'm not gonna hide it. Actually, like I went to ChatGPT and asked it like, okay, give me a list of questions that I could ask Jerome during a Q&A, and I just set the parameters, And the first set of questions was actually pretty good. It gave me a very good like start to come up with these questions that I'm asking you. And of course, like I added more questions from the audience and stuff. But is that like true for every other function that could be impacted by AI? Is that the future, that AI is going to be this companion for our like roles, for our activities? And what's your take on that?
Yeah, I do think so. I mean, there was a metaphor people wrote, like, think of these language models as calculators for words. It's not a bad, and it's not pretty exact, but in terms of like, it's a tool that if you deal with words, could be pretty ubiquitous the same way when you deal with numbers, you use a calculator. You don't do like mental math for all this thing you do, right? Or you use computers right now. So I think it's really like a useful tool. It just makes people more productive. I don't think it applies to everything. Even in coding, by the way, it solves a certain class of problems. It doesn't solve some hard like design problems. It doesn't make bad coders better. You know, like it's just a tool. I think it's going to make people who are productive even more productive. And if you want to be very productive, you have to use, I mean, I think you should figure out how to leverage them. And it's going to be a skill. A bit like when Google came out, you know, people were able to, you know, use Google very well, were a lot more productive in their job. I think it's going to be the same, yeah.
So the other question that we got like multiple times was like, should people be concerned about their jobs? Like what is the impact of like that AI can have in the job market? Like will many jobs like go away and be replaced by AI, or is like people just have to evolve? Like what is your how do you see the evolution and like the impact in the job market?
Yeah, I have a rather optimistic view. I mean, based on history, though, you know, I want to caveat that sometimes history is not a good guide as to what the future is going to be. But in general, when you look at these automation systems, right, they just like change the jobs. And the people who adopt them actually get basically better jobs and more interesting things. So the one thing you want to make sure is that when you have a revolution like this, you adopt it, you embrace it, you don't fight it. But it kind of makes the job that we do more interesting. I mean, nobody wants to go back in the fields and just like, you know, pick potatoes, right? We don't do that anymore. We have machines to do this. And it freed up a lot of time for other people to do a lot more interesting things. And I think it's going to be the same for a language model. They just make some of our boring tasks a little more interesting, you know? And so we can spend and dedicate our short attention to the things that really matter. I think that's the way it's going to play out. Not really replace jobs, just make the jobs more productive, more interesting.
And
like developers, an example I gave you, like it's not going to replace developers. Like creating a well-designed system that's performing, that has a good architecture, there's no way you can use GPT for that. But, you know, writing an algorithm that parses string or writes a regex or something like that, or write a shell script, like it's kind of boring stuff that we had to do before. Yeah, it's going to do that. So you can do the more meaningful stuff, the design, the system design, the UI, UX design, the performance improvement. Like, but, you know, it will replace more mundane tasks. It's a good thing, I think.
And then let me go a little deeper on that one and see if you have more thoughts on it. But like one thing that comes to mind when I hear that, and I agree with you, I have the same kind of like optimistic perspective. One thing that I've heard in the past, like when I expressed that opinion, it's like, well, but then like the more mundane tasks, as you said, like they are potentially going away. But there's like a fair amount of people who like rely on, like who do those mundane tasks and like they're not really prepared to do more advanced tasks. So what is the impact in society then with respect to education, like in preparation for like the generations to come so that they can do more advanced tasks supported by AI? Like what do we need to do to actually prepare like the next generations to do more advanced work?
Well, that's what I'm working on. So, you know, like my new company is trying to use AI to get people to learn new skills faster, right? And more efficiently and in a better way. So we do need people to adapt. And I think we need the learning and education system to move faster and adapt faster and get people to learn new skills. So I think we'll learn in the future very differently than we learn today, right? It's not about writing like cookie cutter essays or solving some cookie cutter problems. It's really about, you know, learning how to collaborate, learning how to be more creative, you know, so it's like really like honing on these new skills and actually using all the tools we have. Like we use the internet, like we use Google, like we're going to use GPT now to hone these skills.
And now we're getting into something, because basically what you're saying, like AI itself, like in your case, like, and what you're working on, like AI itself can help like scale even like education. And so what is the, can you speak like on that vein, like, can you speak a little bit to the potential of like AI in, or generative AI in particular, like on this new wave, like potentially it has to revolutionize like the development, design and development of new products. You touched a little bit on that one, like, but should we expect that the next products that are going to come out in like the next like 1, 2, 3 years are going to be more advanced because of like the help coming from AI?
So first, I mean, you and I know that, right? We work all on these products. There are a lot of products out there that leverage AI already, right? Like Instagram being one of them. We see all the ad system, but it's more on the back end. It's not this kind of new generative AI. So that has already been done. What I find amazing, because we are doing it in my own company right now, is just the power of prototyping right now with these tools is pretty insane. So it's like almost like creating some Wizard of Oz, products, but actually they work. So you can kind of like put something behind it, says, I wanted to do this, and actually you can kind of figure it out. It's not a perfect product. So this is the one thing I've seen that change a lot. Like you can prototype maybe 5 to 10x faster than you did before. You can come up with new things, get it to work, even get people to experience them. It doesn't mean they are products. And I think the jury is still out as to what will the amazing product be on top of generative AI. I think we don't have any right now, except like, I think people having a lot of different tasks on GPT. I think GPT, ChatGPT in some way has product market fit because people find the task, but it's not like it's more of a generic product. So what are the amazing products that will be built on top of that? I hope there will be some learning products, which is what I'm working on. But I think the jury is still out. I think it's just changing so fast. People are still figuring that out. But it will require deep product thinking. This is not going to be replaced. Maybe it's easier to build a technology. It doesn't make it easier to figure out what people's needs are, right? So combining this amazing power with really strong people and product thinking will be the key. And I'm looking forward to what's going to happen next year. I'm pretty convinced that it will create that, but I want to call out that we haven't seen it. Even Bing didn't come up GA yet, right? So there's no really like GA product out there with LLM that's pretty wide audience at the moment,
So we're getting to a good point here also, because like we're starting to talk about like the limitations, what AI cannot do. Like what are other like limitations that you see that still need to be, like we still need to do more like research and development for AI to improve? What are the things that are going to be inherent of like AI itself that AI will never be able to accomplish, that we're always going to need like humans for? Or like is there going to be an AI that eventually will replace completely humans? So what are the limitations?
I want to answer that last one. I think every time you set some boundary, they get broken and you look like a fool. So, I don't know what the limits are. And the current system, obviously one of the big problems is factuality, which is, and especially I think I would say the most annoying thing is how the systems don't know that they don't know, and they tend to kind of like, they're really good at bullshitting their way through, I remember one example from me, like, again, going back to development, is like, you try to use that API and, you really wish that API would do X, and you ask it, how can I do X with that API? And it comes up, it's like, here's what you can do. It looks amazing. And you realize it just hallucinated. It doesn't exist. That API doesn't do it. And then you spend half an hour figuring out that no, actually that amazing API does not exist. So that's a little bit annoying. But to be honest, at some point I thought that was a deal breaker, which is because that factuality is not there and it hallucinates too much, you won't be able to build products. I kind of changed my mind on that. I feel like just the capability is so remarkable and amazing that we'll need to just change people's expectations. So I think the key products will be the one where, expectations are well set as to what you can expect. Like, for example, that you will need to double check the information, or you get other references, or it's just just a suggestion. But I do feel like if you can set the user expectation, I think there will be a very interesting products that can happen. But I don't see the factuality and hallucination really be solved with the current model of technology. I'm kind of a little bit more on the Jan's camp, like Jan LeCun's camp on this one, which is like, I think we'll need some different grounding. I think maybe connecting the language model to more like perception API could be an interesting to do this. So I suspect we're going to have to live with an limitation for quite a while, but I do think some interesting products will come out of it.
So we are close to the final like minute here. So maybe like one extra question before we go, but for many like people in the audience today, like are still thinking how to get started on incorporating AI into their business. Any advice like for them, and like as they are doing that work, like what are the main things, the traps that they should consider, they should try and avoid when incorporating AI into their solutions?
I'm not sure I know all the traps, because I think we're all learning at the same time. My advice will be get going. It's really much easier. I mean, the barrier to entry to using these tools is much easier. We don't quite know what we're going to make of it, but you don't need your team to tell you it's going to take me 2 years to get this. They should be able to tell you, like, let me come back in 2 days or 2 weeks with something to show you what we can do. You know, that's the new spirit there.
Awesome. Jerome, like, it's always great to chat with you, especially like doing that in public with other people. Thank you so much again for joining us today. I'm gonna